settle by the sea. I know your hand is always there to guide me. You are there, you are there, you are there, you are there. Where can I go? Where can I go from your presence? Trouble is in my way, you're already there. You will not go. You will not go from my presence. Word of mine is said, if in the depths I lay my head, in the shadow of your wings you're there to hide me. You are there. 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 I've got my faith in the Lord, and it's working in me. I've got my faith in the Lord, and it's showing in me. I've got my faith in the Lord, and it's plain to see. I've got my faith in the Lord. I'm so glad I've got my faith in the Lord. I've got the love of the Lord. I've got the love of the Lord, and it's working in me. I've got the love of the Lord, and it's showing in me. I've got the love of the Lord, and it's plain to see. I've got the love of the Lord. I'm so glad I've got the love of the Lord. I've got the joy of the Lord. I've got the joy of the Lord, and it's working in me. I've got the joy of the Lord, and it's showing in me. I've got the joy of the Lord, and it's plain to see. I've got the joy of the Lord. I'm so glad I've got the joy of the Lord. I've got the joy of the Lord. I've got the joy of the Lord, and it's working in me. I've got the joy of the Lord, and it's showing in me. I've got the joy of the Lord, and it's plain to see. I've got the joy of the Lord. I'm so glad I've got the joy of the Lord. I've got my faith in the Lord. I've got my faith in the Lord, and it's working in me. I've got my faith in the Lord, and it's showing in me. I've got my faith in the Lord, and it's plain to see. I've got my faith in the Lord. I'm so glad I've got my faith in the Lord. I've got the love of the Lord. I've got the love of the Lord, and it's working in me. I've got the love of the Lord, and it's showing in me. I've got the love of the Lord, and it's plain to see. I've got the love of the Lord. I'm so glad I've got the love of the Lord. I've got the joy of the Lord. I've got the joy of the Lord, and it's working in me. I've got the joy of the Lord, and it's showing in me. I've got the joy of the Lord, and it's plain to see. I've got the joy of the Lord. I'm so glad I've got the joy of the Lord. I've got the joy of the Lord. I've got the joy of the joy. I've got the joy of the joy. I've got the joy of the joy. I've got the joy of the joy of the Lord. I've got the joy of the Lord.
They're the dearest and best, for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross, till my trophies at last I lay down. I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown.
Hello, welcome to our Bible study. My name is Clint McElroy, and today we'll be in 2 Samuel chapter 2. We will be meeting today at 10 a.m., so please join us if you can. We'll have masks available at the door for anyone who needs one. If you're sick in any way, please don't come to the auditorium, but instead stay home and enjoy the streaming service. We'll also have classes for everyone at 9 a.m. if you'd care to join us for those. And we'll be watching this Bible study on the large screen in the auditorium. You're welcome to join us there. We do have these English Standard Versions from the World Bible School available for anyone who'd like to have one. If you care to have one, contact our church office and we'll make arrangements to get you one. Our sick list is quite long, so please refer to the bulletin for more information. We are thankful that Billy's procedure came out well. Paula has received good information about her situation. I would ask that you continue to remember those who are sick and awaiting procedures, such as April, those who are sick and isolated at home, such as Emma, and Emma's family, who all tested positive for COVID-19. Also, please keep in your prayers Alan Morris, who's also tested positive for COVID-19, and my father-in-law, Arvis Buchanan, who is going in for surgery on Monday. As is our custom, we want to remember the story of the two men on the road to Emmaus who were joined by a third man on the way. That third man spent that time with them, encouraging them from the Word, teaching them about Jesus from the Word. When they got to their destination, and he revealed that he was Jesus. This was after the resurrection. After he left, those men realized that while he'd been with them, there'd been a burning in their hearts. It's that burning that they had in their hearts that we hope to kindle in our own hearts as we draw closer to the Lord through a study of his Word. As we draw closer to him, he draws closer to us. We also go to the Word to find out what we need to do to satisfy the Lord. He's called us to be holy, for he, the Lord, is holy, from Leviticus chapter 19. How do we know what holiness is if we don't go to the Scriptures and find out what his expectations are? We also want to remember the stories of Rehoboam, Jeroboam, and the prophet that came to Jeroboam. Rehoboam's kingdom was taken from him, and he was left with the tribe of Judah to rule over. As a favor to David, God judged Solomon and took the northern tribes away from Rehoboam. Rehoboam's decisions had little to do with that, but in the process of that occurring in his life, he had taken advice from young, inexperienced men rather than older, experienced men. It was that advice that ostensibly caused the northern tribes to rebel from him. God had made a promise to Jeroboam during the reign of Solomon that if Jeroboam would serve him, he would give him the tribes that were separated from Solomon. So when Solomon passed, Jeroboam came back from an exile that he had imposed on himself while Solomon ruled. He was in Egypt. He came back from that and took those tribes and ruled over them as king of Israel. Instead of obeying God's will and doing as God had instructed him to do, he decided that it was too dangerous to let the people go into the southern kingdom to Jerusalem to worship God according to the law. So instead, he set up high places in the mountains, and there he created 2 golden calves in different places and told the people that they should go up and worship their God that led them out of Egypt there in those high places. And he set up a false priesthood to facilitate that of anyone who wanted to be a priest and not of the tribe of Levi, as the priests were supposed to be from. These things he did in rebellion against God, and these things were counted as an abomination before the Lord toward Israel until the time of Jesus. We see the story of the woman at the well talking about those very things with Jesus. These things were not acceptable to God, and he didn't just let them happen. He sent a prophet. That prophet came from Judah to the king as he was setting up those high places and told the king not to do that. And there's a whole interesting story about that. But the important part of that story is that the king didn't listen. The prophet availed himself of his charge and did what he was supposed to do, and then he started on his way home by a different path. The last part of the instruction from the Lord was that he go home by a different path. He was met in the way by a prophet from Israel who'd heard of his presence there and who wanted to honor himself and the prophet from Judah. So he came to the man and said to him that the Lord told him that he should join him for a meal, which was a lie. It wasn't true. The prophet from Judah believed the prophet from Israel, and so he joined him. And as they sat down, the prophet from Israel prophesied and told the man from Judah that he had done wrong, that what he had done was not acceptable to God, and his life would be forfeit because of it. And on his way home from that meal, he was killed by a lion. That lion stood by him, did not consume him or the donkey that he was riding on. And people came by and saw the dead man there. The story does not end there. It goes on. There's more to it. But the imperative part of that story is that he had believed a lie. And we need to take care not to believe a lie. Don't believe things just because men tell you that they are bringing a message from the Lord. Compare what they've said to what the Lord has already said, and make sure that those things are in alignment, that they agree. And when you find out that they agree, that's great. You've received a message from the Lord to do something that he's already told you to do. Do it. But if that thing does not agree with what the Lord has already said, it is not a new message from the Lord. It is a lie that someone is trying to trick you with. The Lord has said time and again that he will not send a new message to you that has not already been sent. If anybody else, even an angel from God, comes and preaches some other news, some other message, we're to reject that. We're to stick with what we've heard from God in the past. That's the instruction from the Lord. That's why we go there, so that we can know it. So we know when someone brings a lie to us and tries to pass it off as the truth. So I hope you'll join me now as we enter this study of 2 Samuel. I may say 1 Samuel from time to time. I apologize for that, but it is 2 Samuel. We'll be reading today from 2 Samuel chapter 2, starting in verse 8, through 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 5. 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 8, from the English Standard Version. But Abner, the son of Ner, commander of Saul's army, took Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim, and made him king over Gilead, and the Asherites, and Jezreel, and Ephraim, and Benjamin, and all Israel. Verse 10. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he began to reign over Israel, and he reigned 2 years. But the house of Judah followed David. And the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. Verse 12. Abner the son of Ner and the servants of Ishbosheth the son of Saul went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon, and Joab the son of Zeruiah and the servants of David went out and met them at the pool of Gibeon. And they sat down, the one on the one side of the pool, and the other on the other side of the pool. Verse 14. And Abner said to Joab, Let the young men arise and compete before us. And Joab said, Let them arise. Then they arose and passed over by number 12 for Benjamin and Ishbosheth the son of Saul, and 12 of the servants of David. Verse 16. And each caught his opponent by the head and thrust his sword in his opponent's side, so they fell down together. Therefore that place was called Helkath-Hazurim, which is at Gibeon. And the battle was very fierce that day, and Abner and the men of Israel were beaten before the servants of David. Verse 18. And the 3 sons of Zeruiah were there, Joab, Abishai, and Azael. Now Azael was as swift of foot as a wild gazelle, and Azael pursued Abner. And as he went, he turned neither to the right hand nor to the left from following Abner. Verse 20. Then Abner looked behind him and said, Is it you, Azael? And he answered, It is I. Abner said to him, Turn aside to your right hand or to your left, and seize one of the young men, and take his spoil. But Azael will not turn aside from following him. And Abner said again to Azael, Turn aside from following me. Why should I strike you to the ground? How then could I lift up my face to your brother Joab? But he refused to turn aside. Therefore Abner struck him in the stomach with the butt of his spear, so that the spear came out at his back. And he fell there and died where he was. And all who came to that place where Azazel had fallen and died stood still. Verse 24. But Joab and Abishai pursued Abner. And as the sun was going down, they came to the hill of Ammah, which lies before Gilah, on the way to the wilderness of Gibeon. And the people of Benjamin gathered themselves together behind Abner and became one group and took their stand on the top of a hill. Verse 26. Then Abner called to Joab, Shall the sword devour forever? Do you not know that the end will be bitter? How long will it be before you tell your people to turn from the pursuit of their brothers? And Joab said, As God lives, if you had not spoken, surely the men would not have given up their pursuit of their brothers until the morning. So Joab blew the trumpet, and all the men stopped and pursued Israel no more, nor did they fight any more. Verse 29. And Abner and his men went all that night through the Arabah. They crossed the Jordan, and marching the whole morning, they came to Mahanaim. Joab returned from the pursuit of Abner, and when he gathered all the people together, there were missing from David's servants 19 men besides Asahel. But the servants of David had struck down of Benjamin 360 of Abner's men. And they took up Asahel and buried him in the tomb of his father, which was at Bethlehem. And Joab and his men marched all night, and the day broke upon them at Hebron. Chapter 3, verse 1. There was a long war between the house of Saul and the house of David. And David grew stronger and stronger, while the house of Saul became weaker and weaker. And sons were born to David at Hebron. His firstborn was Amon of Ahinoam of Jezreel, and his second Chileab of Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel, and the third Absalom, the son of Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. Verse 4. And the fourth Adonijah, the son of Haggith, and the fifth Shephatiah, the son of Abital, and the sixth Ithream of Iglah, David's wife. These were born to David in Hebron. Okay, so last week we picked up in chapter 1, verse 1 of 2 Samuel. We read the story of the messenger who came to David with the information about Saul's death. We'd read about Saul's death and the story of David returning from service to the Philistines and finding his hometown had been raided by the Amalekites, and having pursued them and recovered the spoils, he had come back to Ziklag and was there when this man returned from Saul's camp, from the battle at Saul's camp. His clothes were torn, and as there was dirt on his head, and when he came to David, he fell to the ground and paid homage to David. David said to him in verse 3, Where do you come from? And he said to him, I have escaped from the camp of Israel. David said to him, How did it go? Tell me. So David had not heard yet the results of the battle between Israel and the Philistines. The man responded, The people fled from the battle, and also many of the people have fallen and are dead, and Saul and his son Jonathan are also dead, in verse 4. David said to the young man, How do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead? The young man said to him, By chance I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear, not a sword, as is stated at the end of 1 Samuel, but his spear. And behold, chariots and horsemen were close upon him. He looked behind him and saw me and called to me, and I answered, Here I am. And he said, Who are you? And I told him, I'm an Amalekite. And he said to me, Stand beside me and kill me, for anguish has seized me. In verse 9, and yet my life still lingers. So I stood beside him and killed him in verse 10, because I was sure that he could not live after he had fallen. And I took his crown and his armlet and brought them here to you, my Lord. So the Amalekite was probably telling the truth there. In times past, I was more skeptical to accept that as the true story, in part because of the disparity between the story of Saul falling on his sword and this Amalekite story of him leaning on his spear. But those are common phrases for the same action, and I don't think that the difference is significant here. But that's, again, my personal opinion. In verse 11, it says that David took hold of his clothes and tore them, as did all the men who were with him, and they mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and for Jonathan his son, for the people of the Lord and for the house of Israel, for all that had fallen by the sword. Now, those men that were there were probably more likely mourning for Jonathan, and David was, in fact, mourning for all of these others. because it hurt his heart for these things to occur. We know, and we will find out as we go forward, that when there was fighting between the brothers of Israel, it was a heavy thing on David's heart. David said to the young man who told him, "Where do you come from?" And he said, "I am the son of a sojourner, an Amalekite," he said in verse 13. David said to him, "How is it you are not afraid to put out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" Not a good question to have come at you at this point. David then called to one of the young men, "Go execute him," and he struck him down dead. David said to him, "Your blood be on your head, for your own mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed." David took that very seriously. David had had many opportunities to kill Saul and had not taken any of them, had recognized that the Lord's anointed was the Lord's business and left it to the Lord. It goes on in chapter 1, verse 17. David lamented this lamentation over Saul and Jonathan his son, and said that it should be taught by the people of Judah, and it is written in the book of Jashar. And we talked a little bit about that Jashar business last week. We won't go into that again. In verse 19 it says, "Your glory, O Israel, is slain on your high places. How the mighty have fallen." So he goes on in this manner, lamenting the death of Saul and Jonathan, talking about the terrible thing that had happened to Israel because of their deaths. I want to go ahead and bring out again verse 23. "Saul and Jonathan, beloved and lovely, in life and in death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions." Certainly an embellishment of the truth there. Not exactly the way the rest of the people looked at Saul and Jonathan, but perhaps very much the way David looked at Saul and Jonathan. Looked at them as one being, the same mind, the same direction. It's quite clear that Saul sought to kill David while Jonathan sought to preserve David. Saul was resentful of David from the beginning. Jonathan, as early as we know, thought much of David, held David in very high regard, and likewise David held Jonathan in high regard. It goes on talking about Jonathan. "Jonathan lies slain on your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant have you been to me. Your love to me was extraordinary, surpassing the love of women." So David certainly had a close relationship with Jonathan. And again, as I had stated in previous studies, I do not believe that this is what the world wants you to believe it is. This was simply a brotherly love strong between Jonathan and David. I think Jonathan saw that David was the next king. He had no delusions of being an inheritor of the throne of Saul. He knew that David, I think, was going to be the next king. I believe he understood that he had been anointed and that he would be the next king. It finishes as it began, "How the mighty have fallen and the weapons of war perished." So David was very moved by this event. And there's more to be said of that, and we'll talk more about that because of David's disposition toward the house of Saul. But going on into chapter 2, David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go up to the cities of Judah?" And the Lord said to him, "Go up." And David said, "To which shall I go up to?" And he said, "To Hebron." So we don't know exactly how David was communicating with the Lord, but there was an ephod, so there was one with David who could use the ephod to communicate with God directly with these types of questions. So perhaps that's the manner in which this was conducted. David went up there with his two wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. So we heard a long story about Abigail. We didn't hear much about Ahinoam, but Ahinoam is kind of a footnote. So we have this almost romantic story about Abigail in 1 Samuel. And then as it closes, and you think this is a happily ever after story, it just kind of drops this little note. And also Ahinoam was married. Ahinoam married David. So this is kind of an odd person in my understanding of things. I want to know more about Ahinoam and why that occurred after this long drawn out relationship developed between David and Abigail. We read about that, but we don't read much about it in one. David brought up his men who were with him, every one in their household, and they lived in the towns of Hebron. And the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. So they made him king over Judah. This was a different anointing than Samuel had anointed David with. This was done for the purposes of recognizing his rule over Judah. Then David was told the story of the men of Jabesh Gilead who had come to retrieve the body of Saul and his sons from the Philistines. And he sends messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead, saying to them, "May you be blessed by the Lord, because you have showed disloyalty to Saul your Lord and buried him. Now may the Lord show steadfast love and faithfulness to you, and I will do good to you because you have done this thing. Now therefore let your hands be strong and be valiant, for Saul your Lord is dead, and the house of Judah has anointed me king over them." So this is the introduction to King David. David is now king over Judah. And going on in today's reading, Abner, the son of Ner, remember, Abner was Saul's uncle, who was given charge of Saul's army. The commander of Saul's army took Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim and made him king over Gilead, and the Asherites and Jezreel and Ephraim and Benjamin and all Israel. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he began to reign over Israel. So that's really hard to kind of reconcile in my head. Of course, I believe in my mind's eye, Abner is a man much older than Saul was. Saul was old enough to have a 40-year-old son that was not the ones that were in the field with him fighting. So who was Abner to Ishbosheth? Ishbosheth was Abner's great nephew. So Abner was Ishbosheth's great uncle. Is that correct? And he must have been quite a bit older. I can't fathom that Abner was not considerably older than Ishbosheth. So we have a man who may well be as little as, he had to be at least 20 years older than Ishbosheth, I would think. Maybe not, but that would put him in his 60s. And then we're going to read the rest of this story. And that's hard to comprehend, a man of 60 being the man in this story. But again, Abner is one of those men that is very interesting to me, and so is Joab. Don't make any mistake to that. But continuing, Abner just didn't accept that Saul's death meant that David should take over the kingdom. He set up Ishbosheth and supported him as king. And he reigned 2 years, but the house of Judah followed David. And 7 years and 6 months. That's a long time for David to be king in Judah. And I don't know what the disparity there means. So there is a disparity between the reign of Ishbosheth in Israel and the reign of David in Judah. So I don't know how to reconcile that, but we'll read on. Abner the son of Ner and the servants of Ishbosheth the son of Saul went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon, and forgive me the names here, I'm sure I'm reading them differently as I read through. And Joab the son of Zeruiah and the servants of David went out and met them at the pool of Gibeon. And they sat down there, and I'll quit reading, just kind of paraphrase. They sat down opposite the pool from one another, and as they sat there, Abner said to Joab, "Hey, let's have these champions get up and fight this before us so we don't have to go to the trouble of fighting." And Joab said, "Sure." And so they sent out 12 each, 12 from the house of Israel, 12 from the house of Judah. And they come and they fight each other. And as they start their fight, each opposed to one from the other team, they all did apparently the exact same move. So they'd had very similar training. They thrust their swords into their opponent's sides, and they all fell down together. So 24 men right off the bat fell dead. Therefore that place was called Helkath Hazurim, which is at Gibeon. And the battle was fierce that day, and Helkath Hazurim means field of sword edges, in my footnote here. The battle that day was very fierce, and Abner was sent fleeing before the servants of David. And there were 3 sons of Zeruiah there, Joab, Abishai, and Azael. And Azael was swift of foot as a wild gazelle, so he's very fast. And Azael was apparently younger. And Azael turned neither to the right hand nor to the left, following Abner, means he was going directly after Abner. He knew his target. He was going after Abner. Abner, again, my mind's eye sees Abner as at least a 60-year-old man, at least a 60-year-old man, fleeing before a younger man who is swift of foot and apparently keeping pace, but just barely. He looks behind him and says, "Is that you, Azael?" And he says, "It is I. I'm right here." And Abner says, "Turn to your right hand or the left, kill one of these other men and take their spoil. Leave me alone. Turn aside from following me. Why should I strike you to the ground?" Reading here out of verse 22. "How then could I lift up my face to your brother Joab?" But he, Azael, refused to turn aside. Therefore Abner struck him in the stomach with the butt of his spear, not the point. And that strike was so strong that it came out Azael's back, and he fell there and died. And all who came to that place stood and just, they were awed, I suppose, by the sight of seeing how Azael had died. Joab and Abishai pursued Abner and his group, and as the sun was going down, they came to the hill at Ammah, which lies before Gilah on the way to the wilderness of Gibeon. And the people of Benjamin gathered themselves together, defending Abner up on the top of the hill, and so he had the high position. He calls out to Joab, "Shall the sword devour forever? Haven't we done enough? Let's stop this. Shall the sword devour forever? Do you not know that the end will be bitter? How long will it be before you tell your people to turn aside from the pursuit of their brothers?" And Joab said, "As God lives, if you had not spoken, surely the men would not have given up the pursuit of their brothers until morning." So Joab blows the horn, and the men stop the pursuit, and there's no more fight. So Joab gives up the pursuit at that point. But Joab's not done. We'll know more about this as we go on. Abner and his men went all day and night through the Arabah and crossed the Jordan, and marching that morning they came to Mahanaim. Joab returned from the pursuit of Abner, and when he'd gathered all his people together, there were missing from David's servants 19 men besides Azael. And remember, 12 of them had fallen at the very beginning. So David's men were all over the army of Israel. But the servants of David had struck down of Benjamin 360 of Abner's men. And they took up Azael and buried him at the tomb of his father, which was at Bethlehem. And Joab and his men marched all night, and day broke upon them at Hebron. So they marched all night, and as the sun rose, they had arrived at Hebron. There was a long war, in verse 1 of chapter 3, between the house of Saul and David. And David in that war drew stronger and stronger, while the house of Saul became weaker and weaker. The sons were born to David at Hebron. These were the sons of David: Amon of Ahinoam, Chileab of Abigail, Absalom of Maacah, Adonijah of Haggith, Shephatiah of Abital, and Ithream of Eglah. So 6 sons born to David, and I don't know who all these women are. I know who 2 or 3 of them are, but I don't know who all the rest of them are. So David had a considerable number of wives and or concubines. I'm not sure if these were all even wives, but he had now 6 sons. Not a single one had a brother of the same mother. So that's all very interesting, and it's not done. So we'll read about more. I wanted to get through that because those names are very difficult to read, and I didn't want to have to do that again, and I wanted to get that out of the way. That's the reading for today. It's a very strange story, one to be given some consideration. It's not a good thing to have a fight with your brother, with those you hold dear. It's not good to foster hostility between people who should be united. Those things are an abomination. Those things are something to be avoided at all costs. Don't foster that kind of hostility between people who should have love toward one another. It's a very good message to take away. There's so much going on here, and this story is just beginning. We're not done. We'll read more about Joab and Abner later on. So it's also very interesting, the disparity of the years accounted for here. And we'll read some more about that in the next chapter as well. So I don't want to spoil the next chapter, but you can read ahead and you can find out for yourself, and we'll talk about it next time. I hope you found a word of encouragement in the things that we've said today and the things we've studied today. We will be meeting today at 10 a.m., so please join us if you can. Hope to see you there. If you're sick in any way, please don't come to the auditorium, but instead stay home and enjoy the streaming service. God bless. Have a great week.
The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. Therefore I will hope in him.
My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit will rejoice in God. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit will rejoice in God. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. My soul magnifies the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God.
I will call upon the Lord.
I will call on the Lord.
Who is worthy to be
Who
praised?
is worthy to be
So
praised?
shall I be saved from my
Shall I be
enemies.
saved from my enemies?
The Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. The Lord blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. Jesus Christ, He died for me.
Jesus Christ, He died for me.
And He took away my sin.
He took away my sin.
I will live with Him for eternity.
I know the Lord liveth,
And blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted.
I know the Lord liveth,
And blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted.
I know the Lord liveth,
And blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. The Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted. I will call upon the Lord. Strength, my shield.